Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I am so excited to welcome Erika Tebbens. Erika is a business coach who works with women entrepreneurs to help them grow and scale their business with simple and sleaze-free strategies so they can make a greater impact and make greater income. I love the sleaze-free, Erika. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.
It's so good to have you on here. I get to talk to Erika on a regular basis, and so I am in love with her business and what she's building. So let me ask you to start from the beginning and tell me a little bit more about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I feel like, especially for women entrepreneurs, our paths are so weird, like how we get to being business owners. And so mine is also a weird story. I went to college to be a high school English teacher, and I did teach high school for a short period of time. And then I married a guy in the Navy. We moved to the Pacific Northwest. I couldn't really teach, like my certification didn't transfer and all this stuff. So I ended up working for a bank for a long time, had my son who's now 15. And when he was a year old, I was like, you know what? I want to get a salaried job. I want to actually like make some more money and not be struggling so much. And I knew that I could sell. I'd always had retail jobs in high school. And so I started looking into large like retail companies, clothing retailers. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to put my kid in daycare, I'm going to go for management because I know that's where the money is. So kind of like a lunatic, I just started applying and was like, yeah, I'm only applying for management. Like that was it. I put my stake in the sand, and I ended up working for Calvin Klein, the one just north of Seattle, for 3 years. So super busy store, very large team. We were the 5th highest volume in the whole country. And every year I kept getting promoted. And by the time that the Navy moved us again, I was responsible for training all the store managers on the West Coast and running my store. And we were opening a secondary location in our mall while my husband was coming back from deployment. It was a very crazy time, and I had a toddler. So when the Navy moved us, I was like, that was great money, but I'm giving it up because the schedule is a nightmare for families. I ended up working for a small farm, selling at their farmers market stand. And because of my background in retail and leadership, I quickly became the market stand manager. They had not had one at that point. And so I showed them different ways to like re-merchandise the stand, and I taught them different customer service techniques, and I helped them grow their sales. Then I farmed for a little bit. And then I had a unexpected direct sales business that, again, just because of my background in business, ended up having a lot more success than I thought. And I quit that at the early part of 2017 to do business coaching, which by the end of 2016, I was feeling very burnt out, and I had already been helping some close friends start their own businesses. And in my business in direct sales, I was training other women how to run strong businesses, but I literally didn't know business coaching was a thing. I remember asking people like, do people pay other people to help them with their businesses? And I got really curious, and then I just sort of closed the door. I'm somebody who really goes all in on something. So I completely shuttered that business, even though it was successful. And I was like, we're taking this thing online, and I'm terrified, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never had an online service-based business before, but like, here goes nothing. And here I am. And it's like, it's one of the greatest, I don't know, things I've ever tried to embark on, adventures I've ever tried to embark on.
So did you start out serving a particular type of customer, or was it kind of like, hey, I'm here?
Yeah. So I think at first I was just sort of like, I'll help anyone. And because I had a lot of experience with the direct sales industry, I was like, oh, sure, like I can help people in that industry too. And I really had a hard time at first wrapping my brain around the fact that people who I didn't already know would be out there in the world and would hire me. Because in the world of direct sales, it's really about like making it's like you take the people you know, like literally, this is how you're trained, and this is how I would train my people. Like you take the people you know, and then you start with them and you do home parties, and then you meet their friends and family, and then you keep like spreading all the way out. Uh, and so for me, I was like, well, I don't know a lot of women who are running full time businesses. Like a lot of them are side hustlers or like sort of semi hobbyists. And so that was a huge mental hurdle for me to get over in the early days. And then as the years have progressed, I've actually gotten rid of like I don't coach people in direct sales anymore because it's just not my it's not how I can like best serve the people that I serve.
So who are you serving now?
So now I primarily work with women and gender expansive entrepreneurs who have service-based businesses that are established and making revenue, even if it's not the amount that they would ideally want. And I'm really good at helping them figure out ways to scale their business on their own terms and without having to work more hours or do really complicated marketing stuff or anything that they really hate. So I realized recently that I can kind of like segment it into three things that I do. So I help them stabilize the income that's already coming in, even if, let's say, they are doing all one-to-one service and they want to move partially to passive income. So we stabilize that so that way what is actually paying the bills doesn't go away. And then we strategize what the next steps will look like. And then we start the scaling process. And it's almost like a loop. Like it just, once we move things a little bit ahead, then we reassess and we keep going. And so for whatever reason, I have a knack for helping people figure out new offers and how to restructure their current business. So that's where my big focus is right now.
And these are mainly service-based entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So one interesting thing though is because I have a lot of experience in product selling, I have had many clients that also sell products, and I'm good at helping people sell products. I also, because of my background in farming, a weird little offshoot of my business is I have with a business partner a course for farmers market vendors where we teach them everything that we used to do really when I worked for him. And so while it can be a little bit easier to help a service-based entrepreneur really scale up because it's like just a whole different ball game with products, I actually have some good skill set for product sellers too, especially if it's face-to-face products or like they're selling direct to consumer.
Amazing. And such a cool little niche, hey? Farmers market vendors.
Yeah, it's really weird because like I said, initially this weird path to being an entrepreneur, um, is that I realized like I still teach, that teaching is the thing that I feel like I'm really good at. And I just always assumed that would be in a regular classroom with like teenagers. So I still teach, I just teach in this different way. And that all of my experience, like I can look back in hindsight and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, teaching helped me be a good leader at Calvin Klein. Calvin Klein helped me really boost the revenue for the farm I worked for. And then all of that combined helped me in direct sales, which then like my big catalyst for wanting to move into coaching was I realized that women start these businesses that they never anticipated that they would be running. And they're great at the thing they do or sell, but they didn't know how to run a business. So even though their product or their service was amazing, and even though there is a market for it out there, they didn't even understand like basic principles of marketing and sales and like personal branding and all of that stuff. And I was like, they are going to have a really tough time and probably go under if they don't figure that out. And I really wanted to see more women-led businesses succeed. So that's what sort of led me to that path of like, is there a way that I can use this really weird, diverse background of experience to be able to help more women, not just women in direct sales? And then that also forked off like last year into the farming and farmers market vendor community, because I don't have the energy left to farm anymore, but I still want to be able to help those people sell what they grow.
That's really cool. And I think your point is well taken, that even none of us have a really obvious trajectory to where we've gotten to, right? And I think what you've done really well has been really introspective about what's that piece of what I'm doing right now that I want to move forward with, and what is not serving me, and like kind of being really conscientious on staying true to what's moving you about the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And even I went to an interesting food summit on Monday, and I realized that because I have money starting this year that I've set aside for giving every quarter, but I was really wondering, like, you know, what organizations should I give it to? There's so many good ones. And through that event, I learned of a bunch of food related, like food and farming and food justice related charities that I can give some of my revenue back to. So I think it's kind of cool. Like I still get to support that industry. I don't have to actively be involved. I can use other means to still support them.
And that's a great example of the conversation I have quite a bit, which is like you should be trying to make money because these are the things that you can do. You can continue to make everyone else's lives better, and you can continue to support those initiatives that really mean something to you. And I think that that's an awesome example of how we can stay fulfilled in the work that we're doing.
Definitely, because I used to have a lot of guilt around, oh, well, I've had all these different paths. And I think when you give up something, like you were talking about, knowing what's serving you and like working closer to that, like in the direction of that, I think it can be really, really hard to cut the cord on what is not serving you. And you can feel really guilty or very like wishy-washy or uncommitted or something. And I sort of have realized every time that I let something go, it's like, oh no, it's because it makes me able to better serve the people who I am best suited for. And that doesn't mean there aren't other ways that I can support those sectors or industries or people that I care about. I don't have to physically be the one doing the work. I can also like give either my time or money to those organizations as well.
So you've been on a little bit of a path of growth over the last 12 months for sure. And can you tell me a little bit about what growth means to you and what's been working for you?
Yeah, so I would say for me, it's very much about checking in with what feels like the best thing for me right now. Because I think especially as women, we always want to be like, well, what's the best for everyone else? But what ends up happening, and what I'm a big believer in, is that like we have to structure our businesses to be sustainable for us. I'm like acutely aware because of my burnout at the end of 2016. I'm acutely aware of structuring your business in a way that is sustainable, that doesn't lead to burnout, and that it's okay to tweak and adjust things as necessary. And so I think it's just being really curious with myself when I feel like something isn't working, and being okay with the fact that it might be that it's time for me to let go of an offer and readjust my own weekly workflow and the people I serve and all of that. And I think there's also a huge mindset component. Like one thing I'm now very, very, very aware of is that whenever I'm ready to move to that next level, a lot of the same mindset stuff comes up. And I think now I'm a lot better about recognizing it and being like, oh, it's here again. Okay, this means like I'm on the verge of a new level. Let's work through the steps again and like kind of quiet that fear so that I can move ahead, which that has been hugely critical to learn.
Yeah, that mindset is a real pain in the butt, right? And it's the number one thing that holds people back all the time, and they have a really hard time kind of recognizing it until they've seen it a few times like you have and been made aware of it. So what can women do to make sure they don't get stuck with all this mindset garbage?
Yeah, so I would say so the feeling that my brain always goes to when I know that it's time to shift something is always resentment. So whether that's I need to let go of an offer, I need to restructure an offer, I need to raise a price, something like that. I've heard other clients of mine say, frustration or anger or whatever, bitterness. For me, it's resentment. So now if I'm starting to feel resentful and I can't quite pinpoint it, I try to just get curious. Like what is triggering that resentment, and figure out what I need to do to shift out of that, and not feel guilty about the shift, just like listening to it and honoring it. And then the other part is I know like a few things for me that always get in my head. It will be like, oh, you have to scrap all your messaging and just start over. All like you're back to square one and you have to rewrite everything and you have to get like the perfect offer and the perfect copy. And I really start to wig out on that. But now I notice it and I can just be like, no, it's all good. Or the other one that's really big is I start to freak out that the marketing efforts that have served me well just will suddenly not for some reason. And I start thinking too small, like, oh, well, if I'm now moving to this niche or this like level of entrepreneur, that suddenly none of those people exist on Instagram and my Instagram leads will just totally dry up. And it's like, no, there's like a billion people on Instagram. It's fine. But it took many shifts in my business for me to catch that, like, when my brain starts to spin out on those two things, it really isn't about those two things. It's about fear.
Yeah. And what kind of tools do you use to ensure that you can work through those? I mean, what have you learned or what have you kind of collected along the way that is helpful?
I think there are a few things. I think having really good coaches that can call you out on your crap and realize that, hey, this is just fear. This isn't reality, and kind of reframe it. I think that really helps. I think also having trusted groups of other like business friends, other friends in the industry is really critical, because sometimes you just need to get it out of your head and say like, this is what I'm freaking out about right now. I need to just talk this out with somebody, and to be able to have other people who are like, okay, like, let's chat about it, or sort of soothe your anxieties, or maybe give you helpful ideas. And I think another, even just, journaling or mindfulness and being compassionate with myself is helpful. And also, as I've now been in the online sphere for about 3 years, little under 3 years, and I've had the opportunity to meet people who in my mind I would classify as like more successful than me or more well-known than me or anything like that, and seeing that they still struggle. Like, yes, they are very successful and very amazing, and I totally look up to them, but it's not smooth sailing at any level. And so I think that rather than looking at it like I'm flawed, I'm like, oh, everyone's flawed. Everyone is going through this. It's just we all have our own triggers and we all have our own stuff. And I'm not broken, and there's no magical mountain peak where all of this goes away.
No, never. I wrote a post about this the other day. I'm like, nothing's ever finished. If that's what we're striving for, we're going to be in this continuous phase of dissatisfaction and questioning ourselves. Where if we just look at this as just a fluid adventure, our adventure is going to go up a hill and down a hill and up a hill and down a hill, another hill over here, and that's fine. It's all good. We just have to adopt this attitude of curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that has really been like really crucial for me, is not taking things so personally on myself, like being so hard on myself. And also I think really understanding that like we all in our own way have unique value to give, and that there are always going to be people who resonate with us and need us and appreciate us, and they don't want us to be perfect. They're not expecting that. Like they just want us to be real and honest and helpful.
And they don't want us to be different either, right?
Yeah.
They love us for exactly this kind of shit show that we are right now, right?
Yeah, I think it's like, I just saw this quote and I wish I could remember who it was from. Like I just saw it scrolling on Instagram, and it was something like authenticity is who you are without like cultural conditioning, something along those lines. And I was like, oh yeah, like I love that. I know that like the word authenticity can really get like bandied about as like, oh, I'm authentic, but the person's not really authentic. It's just like authentic for the marketing angle of being authentic. But a bit of feedback that I get from a lot of people is like, oh, you really are you. Like you are the real you through and through in everything. And I'm sort of like, yeah, it's not like, it's not strategic. I just don't know any other way to be like, and I got really lovely feedback from one of my farmers market vendor students the other day, because like in the wake of coronavirus, she was canceling some events that she was going to be at. And she was crafting this email to send to her list to explain why she was backing out of these events and everything. And she was like, I was really afraid to be that open and honest. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of, all of it. And she was like, but you are so honest in your emails that it made me feel like I could do it too. And I was like, oh, I don't think like when I'm writing an email, I don't even think about that. I'm like, I'm just writing as if I'm writing to like, I don't know, somebody I really care about or I'm friends with. And so it was refreshing to hear that like other people are like, hey, you being you helped me be me in a really in like a really frustrating, challenging moment. And I was like, thank you for telling me that, because sometimes I'm just like, nobody responds to my emails. Is anyone even reading them? Does anyone care? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess they do.
They do. And it's always amazing down the road when you hear that. And there are people who read every single one of my emails, and I have no idea that they do. How?
No, me either. I think there have been a small handful of times, especially in my younger life, when I was like dating somebody who maybe hung out with like a different crowd. And I was like, oh, well, I'll see if I can, kind of, I don't know, tone myself down or like whatever. And it felt like having an out of body experience. I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Like
maybe it's a social experiment, but you never know.
Yeah.
What do you think these clients that you're working with, what are they struggling with?
I think that a lot of it is making up stories in their mind about that people aren't interested in what they have. I think if I could say, it all boils down to one thing. And I think, this is easy for all of us. We are so close to absolutely everything we do. We are in our heads all day long, analyzing every little thing that we do. that it's so easy to then wrongly assume that everyone else knows that that is the thing we're doing, that, oh, we're launching this thing during these 5 days, or, oh, I have this new offer, or, oh, these are the things I can help you with specifically. And so I have really found that encouraging them to go out on wherever it is they're marketing themselves and say, hey, like, this is this thing I have. This is who it's for. Like, this is how it will help you. Here are some of the, outcomes that other people have gotten. And here's how you can get it too. That's really been transformative. Because I just had a client the other day who I reminded her, she does bookkeeping. And I was like, hey, it's tax season. Like, remind your list that you have spots open for book cleanup before taxes. And she was like, oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. She was like, somebody just reached out the other day because I posted something. And she was like, oh, I just assumed it was already too late. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, people on the outside they don't know. Like, they might be telling themselves a story as well that's like, oh gosh, she's so great at what she does. I'm sure she's totally booked until tax time is over. And so I won't even bother her. I won't even reach out. Like, we all tell ourselves these assumption stories all day long. And usually they're not grounded in any sort of logic. They're just grounded in emotion. So same thing with like a lot of my clients, like I encourage a lot of my clients or even like podcast listeners, like I've talked about, like, you got to follow up with people, make sure you follow up, like build those relationships and follow up. And I feel like 9 times out of 10 people are like, oh, I felt like I couldn't follow up, or I shouldn't, or that would automatically be sleazy or pushy. That's a big one too. And I'm like, no, like, think about all the times that you get an email and you mean to respond and something happens and you forget, and then it gets buried in your inbox. And then you think about it later and you're like, well, it's probably too late for that thing now. Or, well, now it's probably embarrassing if I reach back out because she's going to think that I was ignoring her for 2 weeks or whatever the case. And so I think that's a key reminder is like, don't make assumptions, and it's always okay to politely reconnect with people. It's not pushy at all.
I think there's even an element of psychology where people sit on the fence for a really long time, right? They do. And that's human nature. And they don't have really advanced decision-making skills, right? And so if there's any way to talk themselves out of a decision, they'll do it. And delaying is just one of those things. So if you show up and you're like, hey, let's continue this conversation about this thing, then you're kind of pushing them off the fence, and without it being like pushy or sleazy or anything like that. Sometimes they just need that check-in. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, even if somebody's like, yeah, gosh, I still can't do it, but like, I appreciate you reaching out, or I've been, following along with everything you put out, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. And I think that they love knowing that you were thinking about them in this very genuine, sincere way. And I think another big thing that comes up too, and I struggle with this too, is like when we have the curse of the expert, I think that it's so hard to realize how valuable you are to somebody else, because the thing that is so easy for us that feels like the dumbest, most obvious thing in the world is totally life-changing for somebody else. And I think that when we minimize what we bring to the table, and we are like, kind of the like justing on yourself, oh, I'm just a this, or, oh, I just know how to do that, or whatever. I think we really do a disservice to the people that we can serve if we are okay being a little vulnerable and saying, oh, I actually can probably help you with that. And, here's how you can work with me. Because I always use the example of like my best friend, and she's a client of mine. She runs a hugely successful business. And one of her offerings is a course that teaches moms how to clean their homes in less time. And literally every day people are like, this course saved my life. Like, I never learned how to clean. I felt really ashamed, like, or I'm wasting too much time cleaning every week, but I never got taught any other way. And there were many times, because I've known her for years, where she was like, I feel kind of dumb putting this course out. Like, it's just a course about how to clean your house, but she did it, and it's been hugely impactful. So I think we shouldn't minimize, just because something's easy for us doesn't mean it doesn't have value to somebody else.
And I think there's some assumption there too, that we try to go out in our marketing and our selling, and we assume people know a lot of things. I've just been digging into Pinterest with Megan Williamson, who is going to be, who I interviewed on a previous episode. And she's like this Pinterest guru. And in doing and studying what is successful on Pinterest, it just reminded me how much we have to break down our messages into digestible, understandable pieces, because the general population out there looks at you as an expert because you are an expert, because you know something that they, or you understand something at a higher level than they do. And that doesn't mean you're better. It doesn't mean you're superior. It just means that's somewhere that you know more. And so we have to break it down to something that's accessible and start with something, because otherwise we think we need to say too much.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I will say, like, I'm the queen of having to remind myself. I remind my clients, and I remind myself all the time, like, less is more, less is more, less is more, because I so badly want somebody to have all of the information. And because I'm like, oh, but then they'll have so much success and they'll be so happy and everything will be amazing. But I have to remember, like, no, it's overwhelming. Like, the bite-sized baby steps are so much more fruitful in the long term than, word vomiting a million things all over somebody about what to do. But
Yeah,
it's hard.
yeah, and it really is, right? Because in one breath, you feel like you need to tell everybody everything, not just to help them but because it feels like credibility for you too. And I think women struggle with that credibility so much, and that confidence that they, we're always trying to make ourselves smaller, and we're always trying to make ourselves feel less like we're a showboat, right? And that's a curse. It's a curse for women.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And I think it's also in that mindset of, like, I shouldn't be able to make money off of something so easy. Like, I shouldn't be able to tell somebody one simple little thing, or give them, a digital, a $19 digital download or something that changes a lot in their life in a positive way. Like, it feels like, oh, well, it shouldn't be that easy. Like, I should be having to do more. I should be telling them more. I should be giving them more. And yeah, and the proving ourselves, I think that's a huge thing. Because, like, we joke that I don't often work with men, and I just was having a virtual coffee chat with a guy, and he sells physical products. And I said, you maybe already do this, but are you following up when you reach out to those, like, affiliate partners? And he was like, of course, of course you got to follow up. And I was like, God, let me tell you, women don't, like, because I feel like not all men, but, like, a lot of men are just like, oh, of course I follow up. Of course I do this. Of course. Oh, I just learned this thing 10 minutes ago. Oh, sure. I'll create a course on it. You could pay me $700 for that information. Like, I feel like there's just not culturally that fear of being found out as, like, a fraud. And I think that because women are perpetually afraid and at every level struggle with imposter syndrome, we're like, if I just give more and more and more, then they'll know, like, I'm the real deal, and they won't feel bad that they gave me money.
It's a plague. It really is. And
Yeah.
I hope one day we we are able to make a difference for more women who can embrace their value and start talking about money in a much more comfortable way.
Yeah. I think so too. There are some people, one person who I love, I've been following her even before I had this business, is Brooke Castillo. And I love how open and honest she is about how much money she makes and her monetary goals and how she spends her money. I love it. Like I can't get enough because I think it makes it real. Like when it's like that representation thing. Like if you see another woman succeeding at this high level, you can no longer say, well, that's impossible to do. It's sort of like, maybe it is possible. Like maybe I could hit that too.
The other risk is that we make up stories about women like that, right?
Yes.
Well, she shouldn't be.
Right.
She shouldn't be talking about her money. Oh my gosh, go look at all the bro marketers. All they do is talk about their money.
Yeah.
There are 6 comma clubs or whatever, 6 figure, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
There's like this peacocking all the time, and I don't think it's bad. I think it's fine. But if we can assign money to become an enabler for us, then the conversation changes a little bit, right? But oh my God, the stories about money. I got them. Everybody's got them. But we're still stuck here. I was talking to Chamberger about this on our podcast interview, and big part of her book is like, just like your money's there to enable you. Your money is there to help you get what you want and to help you do more. But we have this huge problem with it because we're always conditioned to not take from people. And asking for money for something is all about taking from someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that being comfortable like making the ask and then receiving is really like a learned skill. It really is something that feels so scary. And I think that even from selling products, it was, if somebody said no, they weren't saying no to me. It was just, I don't like the product or whatever. It's not for me. It's like, okay, whatever. And I think part of why I got good at selling is because I sold products for so long that were not my products, not my company, didn't really matter to me. Like I wanted to do a good job at my job, but I wasn't emotionally attached to the product. So I could get really comfortable with selling and hearing no or not right now. But when I switched to selling a service, like I said, like I don't half-ass stuff. I'm all in. So when I went to this business model, I immediately hired a coach because I was like, I don't know. Like I know I'm smart enough to learn it all, but I don't know how to run a entirely online service-based business. And it was, there was a little bit of a learning curve for me on how do I sell an intangible thing. And I'm the one that is like, the intangible thing is my knowledge. And so then if people are saying no, like they are saying no to me, and how do I get comfortable with that? And all of that. It was definitely like a learning experience, and I'm so much better with it now and more comfortable with it now. But yeah, it's a whole thing. It's like a whole different skill set.
So what was that process that you went through to get more comfortable? Because I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing what you went through to get to that place. I think a lot of people are here going, well, even this morning in a comment on a thread, someone said, well, in light of all the things going on right now, I shouldn't sell my services because isn't that frivolous?
Yeah. So that is, I think that's a really interesting point. And I know people are really freaked out about selling and marketing right now. I think there is, it's funny. I was talking to a friend yesterday and she does SEO stuff, and she happens to be mid-launch of a smaller SEO course. And I have done an intensive with her for blog posts for this year. And I'm like, well, now that I'm going to be homebound, it's actually opening up time where I can finally get my act together and write those blog posts because my like regular operating schedule is just different right now. And so we were talking like this might actually be a really good time for people because they're not going to be going out to all the networking events or the other things that entrepreneurs might be doing. They might have more time to be home and actually finally write that content that they've been meaning to write. And you can help them be more strategic about it by teaching them SEO. And so the way she adjusted it was she added in an additional payment plan, which was like a really cool balance of like, if this is not a great time, but you still want the help, I've added this extra payment plan. And if it's not the right time, like that's cool too. No worries. So I think it is wrong to assume that that there's never a market out there for what you have, especially if you do, my God, business coaching or anything like that. When people are suddenly like, oh, my spouse now like has a job where they can't work from home and now we're screwed. I need to ramp stuff up. Like you better believe they need help. Or any of those other, like, I think in any recession, it pushes a lot more people towards taking ownership of their own time and money and all of that. And those people need help figuring it out. So, yeah.
I saw that email today, and I remember I commented to somebody this morning about this is Meg's email,
Mm-hmm.
and I said what an amazing positioning, right? Because it's absolutely true. We are here to help, and we can help, but when people need help, they're looking for it to land in their laps, right? They don't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for someone who has thoughtfully gone through the scenario and figured out what they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so funny. I totally forgot that you do know Meg. It's weird. Like sometimes I forget who in my world overlaps with other people because she is a first and foremost an in real life friend to me. So sometimes I
Yeah.
forget so many people online know her too.
Yeah, she's worked in my program, and she's a friend as well. I'd like to get her on the podcast too.
Yeah.
Let me switch gears a little bit. I want to know, like, what's the most pivotal moment that you've had in your business so far?
I would say that, gosh, okay. So I feel like it's really been when, in sort of like an ongoing way, when I give someone what feels like a very little bit of strategic advice and then they take it and they use it and they're like, that was really easy and it didn't feel painful and it totally worked. And I'm so appreciative. I'm like, it's like every time I'm surprised. I don't know why, but every time I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, I'm so glad you told me. That makes my heart so happy. I'm so thrilled for you. That always feels good. And I think it just reaffirms for me that that taking that risk and starting on this journey of coaching was really the right one for me. And I think anytime that I have done something that goes against the grain, but feels right for me, it always works out. So a few things, like one that is personal and then another that's business. So I homeschool my son. He's 15. I've done it since he was in second grade. And I was really terrified. I never planned to homeschool. That was never even something I considered. And I was really active with the PTA in his school. And I was very worried about the judgment of like, I'm not going to be there anymore to help them. And what are people going to think of me and say about me? But I knew in my heart that it was right. And so I just did it anyway. And I'm so, so, so glad I did. And I think that at the end of 2016, when I started getting curious, I was super, super, super involved with the direct sales company I was with. Like I had a team of people who looked to me for guidance. I had people, colleagues of mine who I would co-lead training events. Like there was all of this stuff. I was afraid like people at the top were going to be mad because I was a high performer. But there was something that was just like, you have to go out on your own. Like this is the right thing to do. And I was petrified every step of the way. And even that first year of business was really like just terrifying and a lot of like trial and error. But I think like knowing that I had done really scary, uncommon things before, or even like roller derby, because you and I have done roller derby. Like I couldn't even roller skate when I tried out for roller derby. And people are like, how would you try out? And I was like, I don't know. I kind of do these crazy like leaps of faith where I'm like, I'm going to do this thing and I just trust that it's going to work out and I'll figure it out. And I feel like it's like a compound effect of every time I do one of those things and I don't die and nothing tragic happens, I realize like, oh, I can actually do these crazy things. Like it's not always easy. It doesn't always like happen overnight, but it makes me more brave for future things. So there's not necessarily one like hack or pivot, or like thing within my business per se, but I think just like really having a deep trust and total faith, even when you're like, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, just knowing like, this feels right and I want to be curious about this path. That has been one of like the biggest gifts to myself, I would say.
Yeah, you and I are very similar in that way, right? I look at these situations when I joined Derby, it had been 6 years of people telling me to do it, and then finally I was like, no, I really want to do this, so I just went and did it. I didn't know how to skate. I'd never been on roller skates before, and I never became a very good skater, but it was still fun, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that always went through my head is like, other people do it, why can't I?
Yeah. Yep.
Why shouldn't I? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be a beginner.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. The it's okay to be a beginner, I think, is a huge one. And yeah, same thing. I'm not the greatest homeschool mom. I was not the greatest roller derby player. I'm not recording this from my yacht, from my 8-figure coaching business. Like, but I'm like, I know my lane. Like, I know what I'm good at. And I know that I, even in a small way, deserve to take up space and like do what I want to do what feels fulfilling. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Okay. I want to ask you a question I ask everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between what's real and what we see out there in the online business world?
I would say what is real is that there is no perfect entrepreneur and there's no one perfect way to do anything. I think that is like one of my biggest aggravations is when somebody is like, well, in order to do this, you have to do this. Because even though I'm like mostly an obliger, when I hear stuff like that, the like 20% rebel in me is like, oh, really? Okay, well, I'm going to prove to you that that's not the case. Like, I think the whole thing of like, you have to always focus on list growth and have this ginormous email list to be successful. Sure, it can help. I mean, especially if your business is totally passive, but like, you don't have to have a giant email list to be successful. Like you don't have to have only high ticket things or only low ticket things or only one-on-one or only courses or groups or whatever. I think that there is a lot more nuance. And I think that even when you see other people doing stuff in the online sphere, and you make assumptions about, oh, this must be working great. Oh, this must be phenomenal. That is not always what it's like, how it is on the back end. Like they might say they had this 7-figure launch, but you have no idea what their ad cost was. You have no idea what their cost to pay their team was. Like, you don't really know any of that unless you know these people very well on the back end. And so I think I would like to reassure people that, like, you do not have to be Marie Forleo. You do not have to be Amy Porterfield. You do not have to be Jasmine Star, or follow along with, anything that doesn't resonate with you in order to have a successful business.
Yep.
So
most of my clients have teeny tiny little email lists and don't need to bother with all of the stuff that we get pushed in the online world, right? We're moving into an age of more real business now, where we have enough traction, enough uptake, and we don't all need to run passive income businesses. We just need to focus on what feels good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, can it sometimes be more lucrative to like create one thing and say like, oh, everyone needs this? Like, sure. But again, I believe in like radical candor. Like, if somebody's like, oh, you need to, have this or that, I'm sort of, or if they ask me, do I need to have a course? Do I need to do this? I'm always like, it depends. Let's have a conversation about it. Because there's a lot more unpacking to do for you personally, as the one who's going to be responsible for selling that thing, to figure out if you want to sell and maintain that offer. And so I think it's part of why I believe so strongly in getting personalized advice, like whenever you can. I know that tends to be a little bit more costly, but I think that it is hugely beneficial to get some personal advice. And I mean, case in point, like, I think there's a thing, like, I love the conversations you and I have had around pricing. And I totally do believe, pricing tells a story and all of that. I know for me, I was told too early on to have too high of a price point. And because I wasn't emotionally comfortable with this brave new world of being online and selling myself as a service, I just couldn't even wrap my brain around how I would market to people properly and then close those sales. So when I went again with my internal compass and I said, you know what, I'm just going to start offering like 1 hour sessions for like, I don't even know, it was like $197. It was definitely below $200. And I got a few of those under my belt. And I actually started working with more clients and seeing what they need and all of that. That immediately gave me this like feedback loop and this confidence that's like, if I had a hack, that would be my hack, which is so funny because it's the same as like, the MeWo program or whatever, before I even knew about that program existed. But that confidence, like it's what has propelled me to each new level. And so it's like, even you recently, when you're like, change your rates, I was like, okay. Because I was like, I just needed like a loving push, but I was like emotionally, I was there. I was ready for it. But I think if somebody tells you, oh, you want to charge 200, charge 2,000 or something, even if they are best intentioned and even if your service is totally worth 2,000, if you don't feel comfortable with that, like, you will just self-sabotage. So just go low. There's no shame in starting low and then moving up.
Yeah. Just don't stay there. Right.
Yeah. Don't stay there. You don't want to stay there.
Yeah.
But like, even if you do one, just to feel like,
yeah,
I did it, I sold it.
Yeah.
It will help you.
I've got a new program I just put out there and I'm selling it for about half of what it's worth right now, just so I can work out the kinks. And get the confidence that this is something people want and they want to work in this way, and I want to make sure. It's fine. Yeah. It's not on brand for me, but it's fine. Listen, we're coming up on time, but I want to know from you, what's next for Erika?
Yeah, so it's this is something I've really been thinking about lately. I actually just, so like I said, I love teaching. I love training. I'd had a previous Facebook group that was, so my podcast is called Sell It Sister. And so I had this Facebook group, but it kind of wasn't, because I started it right when I began, it didn't really have a lot of my like current ideal clients in it. So again, I was starting to get resentful every time I go to post and like try to help people. I'm like, it's so many people in network marketing. Like I'm not being useful to this population and I'm not making good use of my own time. But recently I realized I really miss like teaching people things. And not even necessarily like super big webinars or anything, just like a quick 20-minute training on something. So I just created a new group called Scale It Sister. And I was going to launch it at the end of the month. But I realized with everything going on with coronavirus and stuff, and people are feeling really shaky, like I was like, I'm just going to open the doors early. And there's no agenda. There's no anything. I love like community is really important to me and all of that. So I'm just like, I just want to be a space. Like if people just want a space to be and maybe get some like quick wins or just to even feel in community, I'm happy to do that. And then I think really for the foreseeable future, working with people one-on-one, and maybe when things sort of normalize, I would love to go out and do more speaking because I love public speaking. I feel like that's definitely on hold for the short term, hopefully the short term. And I don't know, we'll see. Sometimes I'll just get like an inspiration for a program or an offer and I'm a fairly fast actor. Like if I get that bee in my bonnet, I'm like, all right, we're doing it. Like I'm launching at the end of this week. So yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm an activator, strengths finder. I just want to start things. I want to get them done.
Yeah. Like I've been known to like launch a whole, actually, I remember you seeing your email where you're like, there's no sales page for this. Like if you want in, just message me. Like that's often how I am. I'm like, there's no fancy sales page. This is,
I filled both those spots within 24 hours. That was a good lesson.
Yeah.
Just create an off the cuff email. Just say exactly what you want to say and it's going to resonate.
Totally. So I think it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't have any big new offers or programs on the horizon. Just, I think, working with more people and then again, getting curious, and when inspiration hits, then we'll see.
Awesome. All right. We got to wrap up this episode. Such an amazing conversation. I always love talking to you. Good thing I get to talk to you almost every day. But make sure to go check out Erika, and she has an offer for you. Can you tell us where we can find you? And you have a little something that everybody might want to check out.
Yeah. So erikatebbens.com, and on Instagram, Erika Tebbens Consulting. I hang out there. I really love connecting with people there. And then my freebie, it's called my No Sleaze Sales Method Guide. So it's just a real quick, it's like a couple page PDF that teaches you my framework. It's my sales. It's actually like an acronym. It's very simple to remember. It's not any complicated script or anything. It works for product or service-based businesses. And like literally, if you feel any sort of way about selling, you can read through it in about 20 minutes and hopefully feel a lot better.
Awesome. We'll put the link in the show notes so everybody can find it as well, and everybody can find you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
I'm so happy you came on. We're going to wrap up the episode, but always an amazing conversation with you. Go and check out Erika. Go and check out her No Sleaze Selling. And thank you so much for tuning in today to hear her story. The episodes you're listening to are all featuring members of my free private Facebook group called the Real Deal Business Coaching Group, where we have daily prompts to keep you focused on building your business and sharing your everyday challenges bi-weekly virtual coffee chats, open coaching, and member support from this incredible community. If you'd like to join us, or if you want to be featured on this show, I'd love for you to come and hang out with us in the group. Links in the show notes, or search us up on Real Deal Business Coaching in Facebook. And finally, I would love for you to join us for our next episode, where we're going to be speaking with Hayesha Fursadov, who is a motherhood coach who helps moms move from exhausted and overwhelmed to feeling like they love being a mom as much as they love their children. I can relate to that. So thanks again for being here. If you've enjoyed today's content, I'd love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on, as this helps us share our stories with an even bigger audience. And until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep being real.